Hello everybody, it's the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. I'm going to be your host tonight. I'm Dana. I hope you're doing well. And you can call in if you're so inclined. We're in Canada at 709-589-4406. The number is on your screen. It always takes me a minute. And now we're doing the show a bit early tonight. No particular reason. We got one viewer, 2 likes, and 1 vote on our poll. And the poll tonight is, are academics who claim nuclear power plants emissions, radioactive fallout, are like bananas and potato chips and flying on airplanes and sleeping next to somebody and peanut butter and being in a canoe for 15 minutes and stuff like that. Actual monsters. And yes, they are. They can be prosecuted under the racketeering statutes. And so we got a good show for everybody tonight. It's certainly going to take me a minute to get everything queued up. My apologies for my tardiness. We had done a big show last night, and I realized I better do my show early. And we got a lot of nuclear news cycle to get through tonight. And we're just going to have a simple show. Not going to be no stress. Except for the nuclear industry, hopefully. Yeah, there it is, December the 24th. And I think I had quite a show. The nuclear industry doesn't take a day off. Ever. And they're just hateful scum every day. Just like clockwork. You can count on the nuclear just to be a degenerate. And it's amazing. We've covered tens and tens and tens of thousands of journalists and academics over just the last decade alone. And they all seem to take great pleasure in deceit and dishonesty and lulling you and your loved ones into so much complacency that it's the most dangerous industry, just the radioactive fallout. And we're almost ready. The thing with nuclear is you actually can't rush the stories, right? So there's no show tomorrow. I'm going to give the wonderful people that are paying attention 2 days off, and Boxing Day. But I really can't justify taking another day off. The industry is not going to take a day off. I'll still be gathering news each day. Because you can't keep up with it. You actually can't keep up with the propaganda. And we're almost there. So I just got to let this queue up right now. Somewhere in the next hour, traditionally around here, for the kiddies, they're going to have a big fat guy in a red suit coming around on a fire truck. Imagine how messed up those kids are when they grow up and find out that he's not real. It's a pretty cruel thing to do. And they're going to be loud sirens, so I'll be playing a little short video during that moment so I can turn the microphone off and spare you because these microphones are pretty powerful. We're currently cruising at 185 counts per minute. Seen around 260 just before the show started. Around 260 before the show started. And you see fallout shelters now are for nuclear. The market has gone crazy because of the propaganda that's out there. And then you got the stupidest thing imaginable. There's nothing stupider looking than somebody in a uniform, a military uniform. You know, we have the luxury of hindsight. There's a lot of people who wear uniforms. They're wonderful people. I'm not saying they're not. I am saying, though, that there's something for a lot of them, or even the majority of them, that when they wear that suit, they're no longer the child that their parents loved and raised. They're now serial killers. I just can't respect that. Bangladesh launches a $5 billion graft probe, $5 billion, for a nuclear plant that was being built by Russia. And Russia's basically paying for it. That's the only way they can get any business. They have to fund it, provide all the fuel. Around $5 billion embezzling. And what that is based upon was that the president at the time, the prime minister at the time, had transferred $5 billion into their personal account, basically. And then there's militaries, there's all kinds of people involved, including multiple family members. And this seems to be the norm with the nuclear industry. Every nuclear power plant will come in. The most recent one for France came in 4 times over budget, 12 years behind, and there's no guarantee they're not going to have catastrophic issues. It's not going to be shut down multiple times. And that the first time they take the fuel out of the fuel pools and put it in, or out of the reactor cores where it's in alleged containment, it's not really a containment because they can burp out through the torus and release the emissions directly into the environment. But when they take the fuel out after about 14 months and put it in a fuel pool at the top of the buildings, typically where they're located, there's no containment. And so it's still splitting atoms for millions of years. So when you say nuclear waste is dangerous, and they don't give you the definition of why it's dangerous, that should terrify you. And the typical nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms. This story was quite shocking. Trump will have almost zero time to prevent a nuclear Iran. Zero time, according to the report by the Jewish Institute for National Security of America. Shouldn't America have their own institute for the security? Why would there be a Jewish Institute for the National Security of America? Why would there be a genocidal Jewish institute? And what's interesting about this is, and we'll have to go into the big screen for the little tiny letters. Calls on the incoming United States administration to join Israel. They're not calling on them, they're telling them, right? They're demanding. It seems they bought and owned the Congress, as we've seen when Benjamin Netanyahu a few months ago came to America. He had 55 standing ovations in 60 minutes. Giving Iran an ultimatum on the outset of the presidency, and agree to fully and immediately to verifiably dismantle its nuclear weapons program or invite its imminent and utter destruction. That is insane. So they're going to destroy Iran if Iran doesn't let them. It's been under sanctions for many, many, many decades, land, sea, and air embargoes to appease a military society known as Israel. But Israel is in for quite the shock themselves, because Iran is going to hit Israel hard before the Biden administration concedes their office. And Israel can't do nothing about it. So it looks quite likely that Iran is going to take out most of their military infrastructures in Israel. It's going to take out their latent power infrastructure. It's going to take out their marine infrastructures. And Iran has thousands and thousands of miles of deep underground cities and roads and tunnels. And they have literally 1 million sophisticated drones, suicidal drones, and very sophisticated missiles that Israel can't stop. As we've seen now, Iran has sat silent for decades and decades while Israel has done everything to destroy him. And this is part of Israel's prophecy, by the way, for their Talmud and their Torah, is the world will turn on Israel. So they artificially created an environment where the world despises Israel. Copeland police seize a car from a man in his 20s near a nuclear facility. There should be drama, very dramatic music for that statement, right? But this was some kid who's not 20s, but 20 years old, and never had any insurance and had an invalid license. I believe it was suspended. But the moron, idiot, Bridget Dempsey, the chief reporter, put out such a salacious headline for the United Kingdom in Crumbia, which is a nuclear wasteland, by the way, where they have cancer clusters in children they try to blame on the flu, while they're alongside the biggest weapons production facility in Europe. It's just hard to comprehend. I mean, if that was one of my family members or friends or loved ones that put out that headline, I would call them up and shit on them like they've never been shit on before. To invoke that kind of fear. It's pretty absurd. And they even show this picture, and I really disrespect Bridget, the idiot. It's a nuclear disaster when I react. A Burna Boy speaks after Speed Darlington release. This is another moron who's currently facing multiple sexual exploitations and human trafficking charges. This is in Nigeria. According to him, his critics are lucky that he has a lot to lose. Otherwise, many of them would not be here anymore. And this is a country now that's about to go nuclear. They can't even take care of their trash. If you go into these little communities, there's diapers on the front lawns of every house with a kid. He wrote, "When they talk, nobody cares, but it's a nuclear disaster when I react. And you all don't know how lucky you are that I have too much to lose now." Oh, we really do, moron. Forgotten nuclear power concept car debuted 65 years ago to Friday. Last Friday. That's not the car, by the way. That's the shithead journalist that posted the story. Every time California gas prices flirt with $5 a gallon, many motorheads dream of a car that can power itself. What about something with a little more juice? What about a nuclear-powered car, says the stupidest person in that town. That's the town, the idiot that wrote that story for that community. Think about it this way. The United States Navy has dozens of nuclear-powered submarines. Think about it that way. Can you even tie your own fucking shoes, buddy? Excuse the language. And we're going that road now. So it's a nuclear reactor under the hood, a matter of when and not if. The Ford Nucleon nuclear car debuted 65 years ago. So what? Wow. So after 65 years, they still haven't got one. Guess what? You imagine a bunch of nuclear cars when you know, in the wintertime here in Canada, you'll see pile-ups like of 100 cars. Imagine 100 little small reactors piling up on your highway. Now you got to build a new highway because you can't go down that road ever again. And then they put out a video. It's just, for some reason, nuclear drags out the stupidest people on the planet every time. The people that are attracted to nuclear seems to be the most vulnerable and stupidest people on our planet. Speaking of stupid, we're talking about Australia. Dutton's nuclear plant won't produce a watt of power. They have a different purpose. It's just to get him elected again. Dutton has bluntly dismissed nuclear as unfeasible in the past in Australia, now asks the nation to abandon a long-settled consensus and flip with him to embrace it. Holus bogus. Which is quite an interesting statement, isn't it? For 9 years they were in power. They wouldn't have nothing to do with nuclear. And the minute they got out, they were like, we need nuclear. Please elect us again. Really, these are the most worthless humans. And if you took a poll, the consensus, the vast majority of people would say they're the least trustworthy persons in their communities, their cities, and their country is the politician, right? Because they're not politicians. They're lobbyists for whichever corporation threw their money at them so they can get elected or appointed, I should say. The crazy plan to turn old Soviet nuclear bombers into luxury private jets. So these are the most polluting machines on top of that. I think if they fly for 24 hours, they burnt the equivalent fuel of what a million cars would burn in 24 hours. But they burnt it at very high altitudes where the particles might take 30 years to fall out. The most irresponsible industry for pollution is the airplane industry because it flies so high, its particles does so much damage to every species for transportation I'm talking about now, of course. Can carry passengers as his payload. When you read all of these stories as often as I do, you come up with this one reality is that a journalist is not anybody's friend, not even their own, not even their families. New York utility proves literally the stupidest thing conceivable, a battery storage project on a shuttered nuclear site. Anything that batteries can do, geothermal can do way better, way cheaper, way quicker, and for way longer. Why would you even conceive batteries? Like, how can you do that? Well, it's going to go on a nuclear site, so stupid doesn't take a break either. Why wouldn't you use geothermal? there's all kinds of ways to store energy besides batteries. Much better ways, like volcanic rocks, can store 6, 7, 800 degree Fahrenheit temperatures for months at a time. And you can use it over and over and over and over and over and over for millions of years. You can store energy in sand. That's well established. You can compress air into underground tunnels, which is unbelievably brilliant, really, because you can store the heat created by the compression in sand or volcanic rocks, and then reclaim that heat to expand the compressed air when you want to use it. And some of the biggest systems, storage systems we're building now, like 10 gigawatts of storage, is compressed air, for instance. But the idea of batteries is so you can deny other technology the ability to show off and provide much, much better bang for the buck. Like, the energy sector needs to be removed from the military-industrial complexes in the government's hands. Like, the ratepayers are going to pay the bill every month. That money is available, it's sitting right there to do all kinds of great things with, and all they can do is take it and abuse it so that then they can mock it and say only nuclear is the solution. And then putting it on a nuclear site, really? Like, these sites are just disgusting facilities. Everybody that's going to work on that is going to end up getting sick and bringing the radiation home to their loved ones. Excuse me. China's new nuclear submarine sinks in a humiliating blow for Xi Jinping, China. He doesn't care. He's not worried about it. It's a dictatorship. It's a one party. And who knows who might have scuttled that. Right? Who knows? What's stupider looking than that? Really? What's stupider looking than that and that and this? You can't use nuclear weapons on top of that. These are the missile cruisers. The United States Navy spent $1.84 billion to upgrade, and then just to throw it away. $1.84 billion to upgrade, and then they throw it away. Space Force to deploy new jammers to yell at enemy satellites. So this is a new entity with the military-industrial complex. And so all they're going to do is just burn money. And in order, when it comes to space, you have to use up all the precious metals on the planet. Throw it up into space where it can never be utilized again. Excuse me. It's not going to be a long show tonight. We're just going to brush through a bunch of stories. Like other young institutions, it spends its time rapidly growing / spending money and destroying resources. And then now you got to fund that every year again, right? Well, the streets are filled with homeless. The hospitals are turning away the most vulnerable. The military gets everything it needs to make sure you can't have a future. Rapidly launching a large array of satellites into orbit and winning Call of Duty tournaments. I so disrespect the person that wrote that. In its latest move, stupid move, Space Force is taking aim at enemy space stations, ships, and satellites with a ground-based jamming system. Works like an endless, loud, annoying screams into space. So any migratory birds flying through that are going to be destroyed, right? if Fukushima and the nuclear industry hasn't already destroyed them, that is. They're planning to deploy nearly a dozen of its remote and modular terminal jamming stations, and they have money for 150 more. Putting them randomly all around the world. Because nothing matters, only them, right? They do no good, they only do harm, and ultimately we can't have a future or a species because they think they're special. Although the project developed through the Space Rapid Capabilities Office has money for more than 150 other idiotic projects. Yes, what's a shitty day without Rafael Grossi? UN Watchdog meets to discuss the condemning Iran over nuclear program. They don't have any sovereignty over any country. They don't have any authority over any country. The media just regurgitates anything they... If they fart, the media worldwide will... Woo! That was beautiful! Truly revolting parasites. I'm not really sure he's human, to tell you the truth. And I don't think anybody ever can prove he is. Wyoming trona and soda ash producer wants to plug in a nuclear micro-reactors. Yay! Wow, good for you! You're all grown up. Did anybody bother telling you they don't exist? They allegedly thinks they're going to have one in 3 years. They're going to have a nuclear reactor magically in 3 years. Has anybody ever built a reactor in 3 years? And the small modular reactors, which don't exist, not even on paper, for goodness sakes. There's none of them out there has an application into the regulatory agency with a license that's approved. There's a few rubber stamps, but they don't have the full applications into the regulatory agencies. You can't build them for production until you go through the whole vetting process. You have to build an experimental reactor. You have to run that hard for many, many years to see if it's going to go kabooey and kill everything within 1,000 miles with radioactive fallout. A deal to potentially plug into multiple nuclear power micro-reactors. Small-scale nuclear energy throughout the state and across the globe. They're just trying to sell stocks, right, for the nuclear industry so they can cash in their cheap stocks and rob the unsuspecting investors. A subsidy of the global conglomerate Tata Chemicals, their legacy is going to be pretty monstrous. Shifting the nuclear industry will allow the company to rely on less on outside electricity power while ditching coal and gas. Well, you can't have nuclear without 2 gas, oil, and coal plants. Morons. Well, we're going to be out this winter doing research. Because I done something stupid. I went out and bought a Skidoo, an 800cc Skidoo with 2,400 miles. And came with an extra engine, voltage regulators, all kinds of harnesses, wiring harnesses, the whole 9 yards. Because I can't sit in silence. I just can't sit and watch all the species die without getting out and trying to record it. And when I say it's pretty stupid, it's because there's so much work and energy goes into doing something like this. But it's in really good shape. And so we're looking forward to getting out there on the trails and start looking for species. We know we're not going to find them, of course, unfortunately. But you can't make that assertion without actually going out and doing the research. And I still got to get a battery for it because the battery's really weak. And the guy who owns it was in his 80s. And he had just absurd amount of spare parts. It had the whole throttle assembly because it's fuel injected, 4-stroke, liquid cooled. Studded tracks. It's unbelievably powerful. Low miles. It'll be the first time I had something safe, I think, in a long time for research. And that's going to add to the wealth of information we already have. I still got to come up with proper... Well, I kind of picked up a little while back some winter clothing when it was dirt cheap on Black Friday. But I still got to get a few odds and ends. It's got a 10-gallon tank. It's super quiet. So, and it's... apparently you can go all week on a tank of gas, which is good because it takes over 10 gallons. You better hope it does. And I'm just exhausted. I hurt myself because I had to lug everything. I had to lug the spare engine myself. You know what kind of pack rat I actually am, then you know what I'm like. But I'm pretty thrilled to have that finally out of the way. I'll never sell that. It's too hard to get, right? And of course I had to get the cheapest one we can find. So it took a long time to find a real, actual good deal. Because Fukushima is an extinction event. And I don't have the conscience to sit in silence. And I can't handle not being able to do research. I just can't handle it. And because I actually, like anybody that's here regularly, you're the same as me, where you love the species, you covet the species. And it's going to take me a couple of weeks to pick up the other pieces I need. We'll get there. I got to get a trail pass, and there's all these little things, but there's not. The bike is or the Skidoo is in really good shape. I'll get some pictures for you soon. It's still on the trailer. It's so cold here. It's so cold. It's just absurd how cold it was this morning when I was unloading, because I've been sitting there for 2 days, and I had to go out and unload some of the parts, get it out of the truck. I couldn't believe how cold it was this morning, my goodness. I don't want to wear my good stuff because that was dirty work, right? And it fits on that new trailer we built. So that's a huge deal. Oh, just barely, but we're going to get some serious research in and stick it to the industry again. Fallout shelters that won't break the bank. So I guess they got stocks in fallout shelters. Like, I think a fallout shelter should be up in the trees, not down in the ground, because the radiation is going to permeate into everything. But you kind of need the ground to stop the shine and the neutron bombardments. Because like gamma, cesium-137, will pulse 600 feet. It'll pulse through the wood you see right there, no problem at all. Stupid industry has destroyed the entire planet. All the water, and both in oceans and fresh water, is destroyed it. All the phytoplankton, the bases of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. ASP Isotopes accused of deceiving investors with bogus nuclear tech claims. Oh, that's probably one of the only great stories today. Besides the fact we can get out and do winter research now. Because we were trying it on the quad, right? And it's a big problem because they're not that good in snow. They're simply not that good in snow. You You can only go out with light snow, which is still fine. But you got to watch out when you're putting all your miles on the one machine all the time. That's how you get caught. That's how you get in all kinds of problems, right? And that's how you get breakdowns. And you need to divide it up among multiple machines. And because the nuclear industry is not going to fund the research, right? And there's just the anti-nuclear foundations that are out there are the pro-nuclear community controlled opposition. They're not going to do the research. And it breaks my heart because we have to make so many stupid sacrifices. It guts me constantly, and I'm sleepless a lot of the times because of it, right? It's a lot of struggle. It's an absurd amount of struggle, and sometimes it takes many years to build the operation. And because the species now, I can't remember the last time I've seen a flock of birds, migratory birds. And I live out in the Atlantic Ocean where there's the most migratory birds will come right over my house, basically. There should be 46 million migratory seabirds a year. We have the biggest migratory route on the planet. I haven't seen a migratory bird or flock of birds in 4 years. Which means they're gone. And what was the catalyst? The broken food chain caused by Fukushima, right? And so that's good news. We're going to get out and do winter research this winter. And it's early into the year, so we got the whole winter to get that accomplished. And so AESP isotopes we cover quite a lot. And certain of its most senior executives are now entangled in a security class action, alleging the company deceived the investors. What? Nuclear deceived investors? Nuclear! And misleading statements. Which, of course, that's what our poll is about. Our academics who misleading statements that nuclear power plants emissions radioactive fallout are like bananas and potato chips and walking in sunshine and flying on an airplane and climbing mountains and sleeping next to somebody and all these you can't conflate this stuff with anthropogenic man-made radiation. Are they monsters? I do believe they are. They should be bringing me in to help and prosecute these people, because I can really help articulate why and how they manipulated these people. In fact, we covered those stories, right, of the original stock. And we warned investors, don't buy stocks in this monstrous bunch of scumbags. Speaking of scumbags, Northrop Grumman to deliver United States Navy E-130J nuclear command, control, and communication aircraft. Yeah, but you can't use nuclear weapons. You don't need this. You don't need nuclear weapons. You can't use them. Even if you get hit by one, you can't use it back. You can make your bomb, but don't put anything in it. Don't make the nuclear and put the nuclear in the bomb. Just pretend you got nuclear. That's the same thing. Why produce something you can't use? And that the emissions will destroy everything with replicating cells for millions of years. Why do that? Nuclear waste could be a game changer to unlimited electricity. What? Wait, what? Nuclear waste can be a game changer? Jesus. Excuse the language, but this is the typical Ronald Stein, a Jew by the sounds of it, Oliver Hemmers, another Jew by the sounds of it, and Steve Curtis, if they're not, they should have been. Today's so-called nuclear waste is only slightly used nuclear fuels. About 3% of its potential has been realized before it's classified as waste. Thus, we are burying fuel which still has 90% of its potential for generating electricity that is yet to be realized. This so sounds like a Rod Adams story, doesn't it? And here's what their comparison is. Imagine your outrage if United States policy was you can fill up your gas tank for your car, and you can only drive your car 20 miles, and then you have to empty your gas tank and store the remaining gas in a certified container to be buried in the ground forever and pay extra for the privilege. How? Like, I've never heard that conflating before. That's a Rod Adams story if I've ever heard one. Well, nuclear waste is splitting atoms, and everything with replicating cells has no autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Gasoline will never have those attributes, and you can always add octane to gasoline that's old to make it new again. It'll always be useful. You can't compare gasoline to nuclear. And the reason that it's only 3% efficient, which is really interesting, isn't it? How inefficient nuclear power plants actually are. It's because the fuel rods, when they go through a chain reaction and neutron bombardment, become so fragile after about 14 months, you can't leave them in there afraid they fall apart and cause a uncontrollable chain reaction which will destroy their country. Your gas is never going to cause you to destroy your country. Your gas will just burn off fairly quickly, right over a few minutes or 20 minutes or something. It's all gone. And radiation is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. It's like to compare it to gasoline. See, there's a lot of things that I can't say on social media because they don't want people to repeat stuff that is true, right? But these people anybody who writes stories like this should be buried in a deep geological repository. Just seal them in there and don't give them any food or any water. Just forget about it. They're not real people, right? Like me and you. It's Christmas Eve, so I got some sugar water, which is very unusual for me. I usually drink ice water out of a copper cup, which I love so much. Copper's really good. And I was debating, should I do a nuclear show today? And I was reading the stories, and I was like, oh, well, you got to do a nuclear show, you got to do a nuclear show. You can't let the monsters. For over 70 years, nuclear has been producing the safest, emissions-free, like, what are you talking about? Most reliable, least expensive. Least expensive. And others around the world that is available today. Is not emission free. It's once you take it out of the reactor, there's no containment. All it does is emit lethal radiation that attacks everything with replicating cells. No matter what species it is, it's going to destroy them. You put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. But if you get one of them in your body attacks it every second for the rest of your life with white blood cells. It's in your body, it's pulsing energy in every direction at the speed of light every second. So it's wrecking millions of chromosomes and DNA in cells. Your body has to try to repair that every second and attack the source every second for the rest of your life. It can't keep up with that. So eventually your body builds a sarcophagus around the source. By the way, we call that a tumor. And I was covering, if you're not familiar with this, you should watch the video I done last night where after Fukushima, cancer in mussels and snails and shellfish and worms and starfish and everything else was jumping from species to species to species. And that we'd done 6 years of research expeditions, just grueling 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean without coming home in the middle of nowhere. where there's no species left. And the ones we did find were full of tumors. And that's documented in 250,000 pictures up at my website that I still haven't got sorted out. And I apologize to the world for not doing that. And I got no excuses. I absolutely got to get on top of that. It turns out that a technology for producing electricity most efficiently is one called fast reactor recycling. These are what a normal human would call a disease factory. They're producing plutonium. And plutonium, and so the people who wrote this story, the people that got their names on the story are not the people who wrote the story. This most likely come from people like Rod Adams, because he's a really despicable monster. And it's hard to imagine anybody else as despicable as Rod Adams, which now is a venture capitalist who promotes small modular reactor infusion. So let me explain why this is stupid. I got a unique way of doing that one, unfortunately. Oh. Hang on. There we go. I'm like, so these the fast breeder reactor, the molten salt reactors, they melted down, all of them, right? So this is Dr. Raymond Gilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, which is the Navy Research Institute. They killed beagle dogs and beagle puppies. This particular study was 144 beagle dogs and a single manual dispersal inhalation. Death from radiation killed all the dogs with 3 different types of tumors. Each dog, typically, if it had been able to live longer, it would have ended up with 3 tumors from the plutonium from, the fast breeder reactors. 1.5 to 5.4 years after exposures. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occurred beginning with 3 years after exposures. Lung, skeleton, and liver. In fact, the skeleton is the biggest. Bone tumors found in the skeleton tumors, bone tumors, found in 93 dogs out of 144 dogs were the most common cause of death. Liver tumors were found in 20 dogs with the cause of death in only 2 dogs. Occurred later than the tumors in the bones and the lungs, and tumors in these lung tumors in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. Tumors in these 3 organs are often occurred in the same animal or competing causes of death, and these findings in dogs suggest that similar dose-related biological effects could be expected in humans accidentally exposed to. So there's a problem with that study. A couple of problems, really. First off, it was discovered that the human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than an animal kidney at removing the plutonium. So you're 50 times more likely to have the same attributes, to have the tumors, than the dogs are. You're 50 times more likely than the dog, and every dog died in the studies. But the same institution, the Military Industrial Complex, Navy, Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, and Dr. Raymond Gilmedy in particular, curium isotopes are the major byproduct in the irradiated nuclear fuel. And forget about the fact that it's a significant fraction of the alpha-emitting radionuclide inventories. Forget about that. It's the major byproduct. So there's more curium isotopes, hence the name curium when you get a meltdown for starters. But there's more curium isotopes than, say, cesium or iodine or iodine 131 or 129 or and the significance of that is that curium isotopes, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker. Lead shielding 20 times thicker than you did for the plutonium isotopes. And the plutonium isotopes killed all the dogs, every one of them, with multiple tumors, And the majority of them died, 93 dogs, and 144 dogs died from the skeleton tumors. And skeleton tumors, bone tumors, are a brutal way to go. And my heart goes out to everybody that has lost loved ones from bone tumors, because that was radioactive fallout that caused it. And don't forget that human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than animal kidneys are at removing plutonium. So guess it's infinitely worse when it comes to the curium isotopes. The curium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod. That's a military study. Blacks in green gets $9.9 million federal grant for geothermal grid. Nuclear gets just billions and billions. Fusion gets billions and billions. Geothermal green energy's joint step forward. The editor is the chief of climate crisis. Climate crisis, by the way, is caused by radioactive fallout for 80 years. It's pulsing energy. Invisible snowstorms covering the entire planet, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Imagine if you had a snowstorm cover the entire planet in 20 days. Snow never melts. It never goes away. It never stops snowing. And it pulses energy, almost at the speed of light every second. Because then you would get it, because you can see it and you got to deal with it, right? But because you can't see radiation, it's the exact same as a snowstorm, except you can't see it, or smell it, or hear it, or feel it, or taste it, or touch it, or pick it up, or throw rocks at it, or perceive it. And it's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. That's global warming. That's exactly what and it kills the regulatory species, like the phytoplankton, which is the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chains, first. And then you got a broken food chain. Geothermal can replace gas, oil, and coal and nuclear instantly, anywhere. Anything gas, oil, and coal and nuclear can do, geothermal can do it right away. Not 12 years past the time it was supposed to do it, not 4 times the price, but a megawatt for $5 million, basically. That's old numbers, by the way. That's like 5-year-old numbers. And so the minute you start mass producing geothermal, those numbers are going to come down to about $1 million a megawatt. And everything is recyclable. Is Japan finally ready to tap its abundant geothermal energy potential? No, they're completely ruled by the moron nuclear industry. EA reports examines the potential impact of geothermal energy worldwide. IEA, the International Energy Agency, has found that new technologies are opening up the massive potential of geothermal energy to provide clean power. So by 2050, they're expecting 800 gigawatts of geothermal worldwide. But that's only because it's not getting any boost. And so if Meta and Alphabet and Amazon had to ponied up the same amount of money they're willing to throw at the small modular reactors, which don't exist, and put their money into technology that doesn't exist so they can get over any humps. And those humps, like quasi-electric, is going to use technology which was just vaporized rocks, so there's no limit to how deep they can go. There's another company, what they're going to do is use 25,000 pound water jets, 25,000 psi water jets to cut through the hard rocks. And then they're going to use pneumatic hammers to crush those rocks, and then the drill bit will go down through that. And these are light years ahead of the current technology, which is pretty darn good. But that's the hump, right? And so if you start mass producing this, every community can have its own geothermal plant. Any community can build their own geothermal plant right now. You don't, like... the reprocessing plant La Hague in France has 500 security guards. You know how many security guards you need for a geothermal plant? You don't. And the reason they got 500 security guards is because they don't want anybody within a very, very long distance from the plant with a camera or a Geiger counter. Okay, so we got Christmas is coming through for a few minutes. I'm going to play a video because it's going to get nasty loud here in a second. I'm going to play a video. I'm going to turn down my volume in a second. That's just a fire truck coming through. I'm going to play a short video and I'll be back in a minute. Hang on and wait for the video. And this video will help articulate how insidious the industry actually is and how they manipulate and deceive the world and some of the players that are doing it. And I'm going to adjust the volume for you in a second here.
When I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented, the ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and IRPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. IRPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own US NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known, it's been operating nearly 100 years, not quite. Main commission, 10 people. It's got 5 standing committees, so it's 100-ish folks. I lead one of the 5 committees. If you look at the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation that looked at the effects from Chernobyl, from Fukushima, from other areas, and that has about 30, roughly, countries that are represented in that group. If you start teasing through these pictures, you're going to see the same people on every one of those organizations. So the same people from ICRP are on UNSCEAR, they're in IRPA. If you look at the NCRP, again, the US organization that advises the country on radiation protection issues, it's 100 people, a lot of gray-haired 100 people. And most of them are part of UNSCEAR, are part of IRPA, are part of ICRP, participate in IAEA. So the result, or the real world, is that there's not that many folks that really do radiation safety, radionuclide transport, dose calculations, all of this in the world. It's a pretty small club, and we wear 20 hats. Today I put on 3 pins, and I could put on a whole bunch more, but Health Physics Society, ICRP, Certified Health Physicist, I've got NCRP on there, I've done IAEA, and so the point is, we're a small group, you should cherish us. So,
all right, that's just perfect timing on our side. Here we go again. So we put out this video just so everybody got something to watch for the next couple of days. And yesterday's video was a really good video if you haven't seen that one. Kenora, that's Canada, City Council was asked to weigh in on a nuclear waste facility that was shoved through without the consent of the population. And you just had these couple of little tiny communities make a decision that's going to affect everybody in Canada forever and everybody worldwide forever. They're just the lowest forms of life, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. They're the lowest forms of life. And they had $26 billion 22 years ago. They haven't grown a cent of interest in 22 years. How interesting is that, I wonder? In a deputation this week, Dan Olskamp said it's time the town council makes its position known. Yeah, but it's not going to come to fruition for at least another 20 years. Why do they need to rush their position out right now? Some municipalities have declared opposition. Others were deadlocked in the debate. Our local municipality has been silent, he told the council in a recent deputation. So what? Like it's 10 more years for regulatory process, which you know that's going to float right through with no issues. They're not trying to come up with a solution, or they could have done it 20 years ago when they had $26 billion. They keep putting it in a community where people reject it, right? Not in my backyard, so to speak. Why wouldn't they put it out somewhere where it's not going to be in everybody's face? Because they only want to put it where there's massive farmland. That way they can poison the most people. Many First Nations have spoken up in unison in opposition, and they're coming out of the woodwork to do so. What a derogatory thing to say. And meanwhile, we, the Nuclear Free North, says its petition against the proposed deep geological repository for the spent nuclear fuel has been tabled in the House of Commons. It's opposition. And we had one of their key players here in an interview and just lit these creatures up for almost 2 hours straight. It was just awesome. Like a month ago. The group says the government has 45 days to respond to the petition. And that group, the Nuclear Free North, they went around in the communities, knocked on the doors, and there was literally nobody, a few, but there was literally only the people that were going to make profit. But the majority of the population didn't want anything to do with it. And yet the Nuclear Waste Management Organization come out and asserted that everybody was happy. Simply not true, right? Workers seek shelter at Hanford Nuclear Disease Factory. Issues a leak. Man, these are gobblish people, aren't they? The word leak should never be allowed to be used with the nuclear industry. After a large holding tank with ammonia vapor was discovered to be leaking from the vitrification disease factory in 200 East area. The vitrification facility was $18 billion. And they're going to put nuclear waste from the tanks. Like they're going to dehydrate it, which means they're going to release a monstrous amount into the environments. And then they're going to take whatever is left over, the solid stuff left over, and put it in glass and seal it and bury it in the ground. But because of the Wigner effect, the glass, like steel or titanium or anything else, will break down in just a few years. Because of the neutron bombardment, the beta rays, the alpha shines. Workers were told to shelter in place with doors, windows, and ventilation closed. Well, how do you suppose to breathe if he does all that? Well, other workers were told to avoid the 200 East area. The Hanford site is a decommissioned nuclear production complex. It's not decommissioned. It's going to take 300 years to decommission it. It's not operated by the United States federal government either. It's operated by contractors. It's never been operated by the government. On the Columbian River, which is about the only true statement in the entire story, by the way. Built and commissioned to treat the tank waste for disposal. Now, the waste was left from the past production of plutonium from World War II through the Cold War for America's nuclear weapons program. Today, there are 177 underground storage tanks at Hanford holding 56 million gallons. They dumped 450 billion similar gallons directly into the soil, right alongside the Columbia River. Which is equal to 1.4 million of the same tanks. Look over here at the 177 tanks. Don't look over there at the 1.4 million tanks, 300,000 gallon tanks they dumped directly into the soil. And the amount we're talking about is equal to building an aquarium for nuclear waste, liquid nuclear waste aquarium, and we're talking absurd by the liter stuff. Aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire planet. Australian Navy advertises nuclear submarine jobs with $120,000 salary and no experience needed. This is not true. It's for officers to become submarine officers. This is not nuclear jobs. The average person can't become a submarine officer. You're usually going to be born into a military-industrial complex family to do it. Australia has been captured by the nuclear industry. 7 of the biggest weapons producers now have facilities set up in Australia. So their countries just will have write it off. And their politicians, influenced by the British, are just despicable. Like the Australian and the British and the Canadian are literally goblins. They're the politicians in the nuclear industry, they're literally like goblins. And because we can compare it, because we've been doing this for a long time, we compare it to the other industries worldwide, the nuclear industries, and these are just monsters. Sticking with the United States and nuclear power to benefit Poland. Yeah, you're going to build a small modular reactor in Poland, Dana. Oh, okay. Who is? Oh, there's no one out there with a license. What are you talking about? Like, it's hard to comprehend. And then you see labor shortages at the top of the page there. You see, why is fusion so hard? What's boosting nuclear? Everything's artificial. There is no fusion. There is no small modular reactors. And yes, there's a labor shortage. And there's a supply network. So they don't have a supply network. It's 100% a straw man organization. The small modular reactors and the fusion. Geothermal is going to replace everything, and you can't stop it, even though they're doing their best. You can't stop it. Atoms for Peace, the U.S. nuclear fleet build-out, and modern-day revival. Like, what are you talking about? There is no nuclear renaissance. This year, in 2024, nuclear went backwards 3 reactors. It lost 3 reactors capacity. Like a gigawatt each almost. So the total capacity of nuclear worldwide is 365 gigawatts. Now it's 362. Because you didn't build enough reactors to compensate the ones that went offline. And solar was 660 gigawatts in just 12 months. It took France 25 years to build their most recent reactor. How's that? Which is only not even a gigawatt, 0.82 or something of a gigawatt. A gigawatt can power 1 million homes, right? Solar, just in 12 months, restrained by artificial inflation because of Ukraine and Russia, still managed to come out and create 660 gigawatts this year alone, in 12 months. And every year you're seeing a 40% increase. So we're just doing a quick show tonight. We're almost through this. Sam Altman's nuclear startup continues hot. 2024, great position to capitalize on AI revolution. Why not use geothermal? Why wouldn't you use geothermal? Because they're talking about small modular reactors that don't exist. They're talking about 12 gigawatts, which doesn't exist. Small modular reactors don't even exist. Yeah, they signed a deal with the small modular reactor / advanced nuclear technology, but they don't need 12 gigawatts worth of nuclear power to Switch, which is a AI company, but they don't have small modular reactors. They're not going to have. It's meant to artificially inflate the stocks in the small modular reactors that they bought the stocks at dirt cheap and now wants to cash in by convincing unsuspecting investors to buy the stocks. The companies they're talking about, like every one of them, the small modular reactors, don't have a license into the regulatory agencies. They got to go through that whole process. That takes a decade. Then they have to raise the money to build an experimental reactor at one of the national laboratories. That's going to take a decade. They have to run it hard for many years to get the kinks out of it. They have to re-engineer it, resubmit it back to the regulatory agencies. Another 5-10 years. They have to build another one to make sure that works, and then run that hard for a number of years before it can now be mass-produced. And geothermal is going to curb stomp everything in the very, very near future, if there is a future. Right? It's just meant to trick people into buying stocks. That's all it's meant to do. And they got lots of useful idiots at their fingertips to do it. And so I bought a Skidoo because I'm stupid and I'm a sucker for punishment, and we got to get out and do the research. We got to get it done. And I might not get this opportunity for another year or two to go do it. And so I made the hard decision, went ahead and done it. And of course, when I do that, in order for that to work, I had to sacrifice everything. I'm already down to 2 meals a day, and I'm already down to using the heat for just a short period each day in the middle of winter in order to make everything else work. And because the nuclear industry has done its best to destroy me, and it's pretty good at it too, I must admit. It's pretty successful. And if the world understood what you understood about nuclear, we wouldn't have these problems. We would come out, we can build a big operation, and we can inform the population, and then Mother Nature would take its course quite quickly, right? But what we do is we'll just keep getting better every day. We keep working diligently every day. We keep fighting for whatever's left of the 8 million species. They're in bad shape. All the whales are showing up emaciated. All the birds are showing up emaciated. The food chain is broken because of the nuclear industry. And Fukushima was a pulse event. And the nuclear industry, of course, there is no nuclear industry anymore. There is no nuclear renaissance. But they have so much influence in the medias and the universities and the governments, they can keep manipulating, deceiving for who knows how long. And we can't have a future and nuclear power on this planet. We just can't have a future. Nothing on this planet can have a future with nuclear power. We're going to come and close the poll. We just wanted to do a simple show for everybody on Christmas Eve, so you got a show for tomorrow if you get by here later tonight, because this is not the normal time for a show. So most people have no concept I was doing a show at this hour. And if I don't do my shows at the regular schedule, I'll get no views, because the nuclear industry doesn't give me views unless it's done at, and even then I don't get no views, but I get ridiculously less views if I do it out of my normal hours. Because everything is done digitally, what they're going to allow me to show up on my views per se, or thumbs up or whatever. But I can't let that be a deterrent, right? It's not about that. It's about being a descending voice exists so that policymakers and investors who can't resist this information, can't find it anywhere else, will come here and they'll get a different story. They'll get the real story that the nuclear industry is not going to tell them they never heard before. And I will provide the documentation for every one of my assertions typically. And so we're going to close the poll. Our academics who assert nuclear power plants emissions are like bananas and potato chips and monsters are monsters. Yes, clearly. Because for 80 years they've been saying that the radioactive fallout is harmless and innocuous and benign when it's lethal to everything with replicating cells. And there's nothing on the planet that has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And that these people can be prosecuted, in particularly the United States and Canada, under racketeering statutes, and similar laws in all nuclear countries exist. This industry has to be dismantled, and we're going to be the tip of the spear. So are you by participating in it. Hope you have a great day tomorrow. I know it's difficult times for a lot of people. And I hope you have a good day on Boxing Day. I'll be back the day after. Which is... Let me look at the... Because we're interrupting our regular schedule. We're going to do a show on Friday. And then come back on Sunday and start bludgeoning the industry because we got New Year's is coming at everybody. So I'm going to give everybody a break. And not on New Year's Eve, though, but on New Year's Day. Most likely. And I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to make the terrible decisions so I can do the research and so that I can keep doing what I'm doing. These are very difficult decisions for me. And I'm going to suffer for every one of these decisions. And there's nothing I can do about it because that's the moral and ethical thing to do. And if I don't do that, I can't sleep at night. If I don't do the right thing. And the right thing is to keep pushing the truth and trying to produce research. James Lucid got a new song here. I love it. I just love that so much. James Lucid is producing a ridiculous amount of unbelievable. There's not a song that he's produced in a long time that's not awesome. And Meltdown Hose, which is what I was just going to play. I'm going to have to try to catch up the next time because I really do love that song. And he's got many different genres. We're going to play this song here. I've never heard it. He just produced it 3 minutes ago. Hang on, I'm going to start it again. It's just, that makes me so happy to see that. We're going to play that song. I got to turn the volume on so you might hear a little bloop bloop on your side in a second. And I'm going to put my headphones on so I can enjoy it too. James never lets us down, folks. His anti-nuclear music, he's the only guy on the planet that's... And he's produced so much. He's got volumes and volumes of it now. We'll see everybody. Have a great day tomorrow and a great day on Boxing Day. I'll see you the day after. On Friday, we'll get in a little show. And then we'll get back to our regular schedule on that Sunday following it, okay? Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. My heart goes out to anybody who's having a difficult time. That's one of the reasons we're doing the show tonight. And James is AI music and AI videos. We've never seen. He's the first guy in history to ever do that. So enjoy. Take care.
Circuits degrade, systems buckle under the weight. Radiation thick, the clock runs slow. The meltdown deepens, nowhere to go. Reflects the start. The fallout lingers, can't erase. Our plans dissolve, leaving no trace. The cameras blink, signals die. No turning back. We watch and try. No prospect of resuming operation. Fallout spreads, no hesitation. We built the future, it couldn't last. Nuclear ghosts now haunt the past. What's left of hope is wearing thin. Restart the cameras one at a time, to wake from the dead in slow decline. Control is lost, the damage grows. Radiation seeps when no one knows. Days lost, no progress gained. Radiation scars still remain. What's left to fix? The world turns cold. A broken story left untold. Don't go. No prospect of resuming operation. Full out friends, no hesitation. We built the future in good rest. Nuclear ghosts now hold the past. Powers gone, nothing remains. Complete puzzle, only pain. No more of a light. Complete.
Yeah, hugs for everybody. Have a great night. Go over and give James a thumbs up on his video. I just did. We'll see everybody in 2 days. Take care, folks.